All right. I'm going to open this because I'm going to need it. Hey, everybody. How you doing? Good. If you're ever in meetings with me or anything like that, you'll know that I appreciate a good awkward silence, a good awkward moment. So sometimes I just like to make them, sit in them for a minute. Just helps, kind of cut through everything. I'm so glad to be up here. One of the things that I appreciate about getting the opportunity to speak is actually like the week or 2 weeks before this moment. And in a way, I wish that everybody took the time to do it, even like if you're just going to pretend. Because it takes some work, right? It's not like we just come up here and just shoot from the hip. Especially in today, you're given a particular passage that you're going to talk through, and you got to go and you got to read the thing. You got to pray. You got to seek God and say, what do you want me to know about this? What do you want other people to know about this? And that process takes time. And I can tell you that process, that 1-2 weeks prepping for things like this, is such a gift. And if you ever wanted just a random challenge in your life, then maybe just take a shot and do that one time. Say, hey, what if I had to preach 6 weeks from now? What would I say? And then prep for it. Write the thing out. You can throw it in the trash if you want. Some people, getting up on stage and saying it out loud, that's not necessarily their gift, and that's okay. But I'm telling you, the prep is, there's no way to lose. There's no way to lose. And so I'm coming up here pretty pumped up because I've spent a couple weeks inside this passage thinking about these things. And so I hope that you can follow along with me. So we're warmed up a little bit. I've broke the ice with some, awkward silence, some jokes, and I've given you a challenge already. And so now we're going to go even deeper. I need you to just go with me. We're going to talk a little bit about something called systems theory. Systems theory, yeah. You came to church on Sunday and you're like, I know what that guy's going to talk about. He's going to talk about systems theory. So what is a systems theory? Well, to break it down in an easy way, it's just basically like a theory on how things work. So there are systems theories about everything. And so today we're going to talk about a systems theory about the things we're experiencing now. What is a theory about why and how could we understand some of the things we're experiencing in our culture? And so this one particular systems theory that we're going to talk about, this guy, his name it's on my page here, and it is, it's deleted. Oh, it's Edward Freeman was his name. Edward Freeman, and he wrote a book, and it was called The Failure to Nerve. Failure to Nerve. And what this systems theory stated was that so a little background on him, he was a rabbi for 25 years, and then he moved into family therapy and counseling for 20 years. And so he had this dynamic of both leading spiritually with a group of people, but then he also moved into counseling. So it was a lot of just use case after use case after use case of what's happening in society today. And so through that experience, he kind of started to see a theme emerge, a theory on how something is working today. And so this theory, it basically is predicated on this idea that in the West, we have this myth of progress. This myth of progress. That everything is always going forward towards this better place, towards this utopian society. And in a lot of ways, that is true. We have the scientific advance that we have, the medical advance that we have. I mean, people have more money today than ever before. The poverty, the amount of people in poverty today is lower than ever before. And so there is a ton of forward momentum. There is a ton of progress. But the myth that he started to pick up on was while that might be true of our material progression, our emotional progression is going the other way. And so that's what he claimed. He said that we are in this myth of progress. And it's kind of turned into, if you want to say, almost like a little bit of a religion. It's a set of beliefs that we're only going towards the better. And so as he unpacks this, he said what that has created is this chain of events. And so he said, I've noticed in society that people, the first thing that is happening is that as we move towards this utopian place, we're only going in this one direction and everything has to be getting better, that we are becoming a reactive culture. And so what that means is that we're kind of hitting into this reactivity where people we're always subject to what's happening around us, and we're reacting to that. So that might be circumstances in life. It might be our own internal anxiety, things, fear, anger, outrage, jealousy. And you can see this happen more and more. We've got this 24/7 digital news cycle. We've got social media, and every single one of these things, they thrive. They live and they die on this idea of reactivity. I've been up here on this stage for a few times, and I've got a deep background, particularly in the social media technology stuff, and I can tell you for a fact that those things exist, and their scale today is a byproduct of them understanding that humans react to things, and when they do, it creates this response, and they want more of it, right? And these platforms and these news cycles, there was a time when they existed for the purpose of sharing information. But when advertising got involved, it became their existence was to keep people engaged so that they could serve more ads, more clicks, and get you to stay there, right? And even on the news, we're predicated so something pops up into your feed. We're really good at writing really catchy headlines, so that we click those and we end up on a news website where we see the headline, right? We get to the first, second sentence, and what's the very next thing you see? Another ad. Right? And okay, I can hop over that one ad. I really want to be a person that reads the whole thing, right? I don't want to be just seeing the headline and grabbing it. I want to be a person that reads the whole thing. So I click the thing, I'm on the page, I'm reading it, ad, okay, I got through that one, another line or two, another ad, and now it's just not worth it, I'm out. Let me go back to where I was and I'll just keep scrolling. And they know this. It is there because that's how they make money. And so that's just an example. If you look around society, our culture today, it is one that is built on reactivity. We are constantly exposing ourselves to what's around us and reacting to it. And so he saw this, Freeman saw this, and he saw that what happens when we are wrapped around this reactivity all the time? Well, what tends to happen is we move into this thing he called the herding instinct. So as we expose ourselves and we start to react on everything that's around us, we tend to herd together into people and places we're comfortable with, and that's out of a way of feeling safe. Now, a lot of people want to say, no, we're on this progress through namely individualism. No, I am seeking my own truth. I am who I am. I'm going to do the things I want to do. Don't tell me, I chose to be in this little group over here that Freeman would call the herd instinct. And so they do, and we gravitate towards those places. So that was step 2 of his cycle. We're reactive, that leads to this herding instinct where we get together with just people like us, and then that in turn creates what he called a culture of blame. A culture of blame. And we can see this. This is not new information. This is just fancy words to say what we all experience every day. So this culture of blame. What happens when you herd together and you're around a bunch of people that they think what you think and everything's tense and you're reacting? Well, is you start to blame others as to why you feel the way that you feel. So instead of examining kind of the root causes of this anxiety, we just examine the symptoms, the surface level stuff. And we, as particularly in the West, particularly in America, it leads to step 4, which is this turns into a quick fix mentality, right? A quick fix mentality. So what did we mean by that? Well, think about it, right? If you're living in this anxious place, you're reacting to everything that's coming to you like it is life or death or like it matters. And to protect yourself, you start to herd with people that share the similar views because that's safe. And then to make sure you feel like you're on the right place, you start blaming others that don't see things the way you see it. And so now that actually doesn't solve the problem. So how do I start to feel better? How do I start to feel better? You look for quick fixes to feel better. And sometimes those are substances. Sometimes it's the pursuit of just your inner self. That can be kind of these quick, like, oh, I'm going to believe this. I'm going to believe this. And so even if you don't get to a resolution, what it does is, in Freeman's theory, it says that it creates in us a low threshold for pain, which I thought was really interesting, how these things start to stack up. That living in this reactive mode where we open ourselves up to the world and all of its stuff, react to it, herd together with just our own little safe space, start to blame other people about why things are the way they are. If they only believed what I believed, it'd all be better. And that turns into trying to fix something real quick, that at the end of the day, it creates a low threshold for pain. And as I look back historically, it's dangerous to do this because every culture and every generation has their own stuff. But I came across something, it was like a really old early 1900s video, and it was of the steel workers in Chicago. Have y'all ever seen these guys, these videos of them walking on the steel when they were building the skyscrapers? And this dude is straight up no harness, none of that business, not even gloves. The dude didn't have gloves on. He's scaling this steel scaffolding. He's got this one little beam that's like going out, 30 feet, and down below is death. That's what down below is. And they just do all this. So I look at that and go, dude's tougher than I am, way tougher than I am. And so I think he had a higher threshold for pain than I did. And so as we think about this progress that we're on, this myth of progress, we take a step out of maybe our herd and we look at it and go, I don't know. I mean, yes to the science, yes to the technology, but when it comes to that emotional and spiritual progress, that willingness to absorb pain in a way, that willingness to accept that the things around me don't have to impact me, or if they do, I've got something I can fight against it. We're losing that in a lot of places in our culture. And that was his theory. If you, we've got a slide. I just want to show you some stats around that. I'll move out of the way. So here, this is 2022, and it says basically men and women on both sides, but the percentage who say that most days they are completely overwhelmed by stress. So men on the right, women on the left, ages 18 to 34, female, 62% saying that most days they're completely overwhelmed by stress. 51% of the men. You go down, 48%, 35 to 45. That's about equal. You move further down, it gets a little less and a little less. And actually, I think this tells us a little something too, right? Like, why are the folks in the room that are 65 plus like, yeah, I'm good. I'm not overwhelmed by stress, I can tell you that. I think it's likely because they've seen more than everybody else up there, and they know something true. They've had more to experience. They know something true. That doesn't put aside what people are feeling. The 18 to 34-year-old crowd, what they're feeling is real, absolutely real, but it speaks to where we are today. The other thing about these types of numbers is they actually have been going up on roughly 30% every single year the last 5 years. So that's not progress in my book. That's not the kind of progress we're looking for. So as we achieve more, learn more, are able to understand more, our stress levels increase. Why? Why? And that's what Freeman was pointing at with this systems theory. He was like, I think this is how it's working. The crazy thing is he wrote this in the early 90s. And this book, this theory, actually wasn't even published until 2007 after he had died. His family came across it and they were like, this is too good. We got to get this out there. And now it has become one of, if not the, particularly in the Christian institutions, Christian colleges, the number one leadership book that they teach on is from Edward Freeman and this guy. So what was his solution? He said, if this is the situation, he wasn't the type of guy that was like, this is the way it's going to be. He said, finally, when you've reached the bottom part of this spiral of, reactivity, into hurting, into blaming, into looking for quick fixes, what is going to break the cycle? And he said that the only way to break this cycle is to inject what he called a non-anxious person. That's good, right? Yeah. He had a more, a fancier word. He called it a well-differentiated leader. That's harder to say, especially me. Got a little southern accent, the syllables, more of them, hard work. So I like non-anxious presence, or non-anxious person. A person who can see this spiral for what it is, step into it with this calm, strong presence, and break it. It means a person who doesn't get caught up in the emotion of another person. They have a clear and healthy sense of boundary between, hey, look, that's you. You've got that going on, and I understand it, but that's not me. That's your whatever it might be, anger, outrage, emotion, fear, anxiety, but it doesn't have to become mine. That's his quote of what a non-anxious presence is. And so whether that means, it's you step into a relationship, it's during Thanksgiving squabbles that happen when families get together. We've got 5 kids, so we see sibling squabbles happen all the time. And if I jump in the middle of my 2 boys going at it, and I am not that non-anxious presence, and I hype that up, we know what's going to happen. Things are just going to get worse, right? So a well-differentiated leader or a non-anxious presence is what steps into that environment and is calm. Not perfect, but calm. Peaceful, compassionate, loving, empathetic, yet firm. So I would argue that I would agree with this guy, this Dr. Freeman, and I would say that what we need, our nation, our city, Jubilee Church, our very church, our families and our workforce, what we need are a bunch of followers of Jesus that step into any one of these environments as a non-anxious person. Strong, full of peace, compassionate, wise, and firm to break the cycle of anxiety that drives those stats. When you're talking to someone who's 18 and feeling stressed 7 out of 10 days a week, it's the 65-plussers that are saying that's 8%. I think they have more of this. They've got more of that non-anxious vibe that we need. And that's what it takes to break the cycle. So I've told you that. When you walk out the door today, we're all going to be non-anxious people, right? It's that simple. There you go. I'm done. All right. So if I had to give a title for this message, I'm going to say this a little tongue-in-cheek, but okay, Jesus is the cheat code is the title. So anybody that's ever played a video game knows what a cheat code is. You put that thing in there and you're like superpowered, okay? Like you can jump from like one level to level 100. I haven't played video games in like 25 years, but maybe their cheat codes still exist, guys who still play video games? Yeah? A little bit? Okay, so it still works. So Jesus is the cheat code. The cheat code. So let's just set the stage. We're still in Matthew. I am going to talk about the Bible. Here we go. So we've set the stage. We're in Matthew. A few things that have happened. Okay, so Jesus went to his hometown, basically said, hey, these guys don't listen to me. A prophet is not even honored in his own town. Okay, so that's ouch. Then next thing, John the Baptizer gets beheaded. Okay, not great. And then Jesus feeds the 5,000, which Paris and Aaron did a great job a couple weeks back on that. One, Paris, there you are. I just loved how your message was all about Jesus. That was just beautiful. And then Aaron dropped the VeggieTales reference, so that was real nice. Appreciate that. And so here we are today with a story that most people have heard. Let's open up Matthew 14, 22 through 36. The story goes like this. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on the mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink, and he cried out, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed. All right, so let's break this down a little bit. There were 5 main words that popped out to me. I don't know if we have all of them, but the first one was immediately. Okay, so Matthew uses the word immediately 3 times, which I thought was kind of strange because, in reading Matthew, you get these stories, but like this one right here, it only took up 14 verses. It's 280 words, I counted them, right? That's not a lot, right? But he used immediately 3 times. So that was just interesting. So a few things stood out to me. Immediately, and then prayer, and peace, and comfort, and healer. Prayer, peace, comfort, healer. 280 words, that's all it was. And inside this one passage are all of those things. One of the stories that we know most, Jesus walked on the water. Yeah, got it. No, but when you read the story, you read these 14 verses, there's so much more. And so we're gonna take a couple different angled look at this story and figure out what can we learn from this story as to the situation that we're in now, how things are working today. So let's just walk through this story. Okay, number 1, he says immediately, let me grab the scripture. He says immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on to the other side without him. 1, I don't know why. I wish we knew more about that. Like, what was his purpose? Because then he himself dismisses the crowd. And what we know about that crowd, it said 5,000, but that was just the men. If you count women and children, people think that might be 20,000 people that were there when Jesus fed that whole host. So I don't have an answer for you. I'm just saying, very curious as to why did he send them all over there, and why did Jesus do the dismissing? I'm just very curious about that. But after that moment, he dismisses the crowd himself, and then he goes to be alone and pray. So he went up on the mountainside, it says, by himself to pray. And then later that night, he was there alone. So he wasn't just doing like a quick little get me out of jail free prayer, right? Like that was not that's not what he was doing. He was up on the mountainside all day praying. And it was almost, you get this sense of after pouring out himself in his power in that way, his very first reaction was, I got to go recharge. I got to go recharge with prayer. I'm going to go to up on the mountainside alone, and I'm going to be with my Father, and I've got to recharge. So he says, later that night, there he was alone. And the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by waves, because the wind was against it. So I'm a real visual guy, so I like to try and picture, like, what would it have been like? And luckily, I've got some things to help us out. So let's throw the first picture up there. We're going to kind of, one thing I think that's, you're in the scripture, but if you've never been to Israel, and I haven't, you can start to, and if you've heard this story 1,000 times, it really is difficult to try and be like, no, this thing is real. It happened. So this helps me. So this is the Sea of Galilee. This is the lake that they went across, and you can see up there, those are the mountains. So he was down on the water's edge. He sent the disciples off, likely from like right below where those sheep are in the far corner, and sent them off, and then went up into the hills to pray. So that's just cool. You can see it. It's pretty beautiful. Like when I think of Israel and I think of the Sea of Galilee, I actually didn't think it looked like this. I thought it was all desert. But in this valley, it's very rich. You can see that. So there's the Sea of Galilee. That's image number one. Let's take a look at the next one. So here you've got just a general sense of what was happening. He fed the 5,000, and they were trying to make it over to actually in between Capernaum and Gennesaret there. And they think that, the miracle might have happened somewhere. This is a screenshot from a tour website, and you can tell they're trying to sell the tour a little bit. There's no way we know where that happened. But, and here's the reason why. Here's the reason why we don't know, is because there was a big storm, and we'll get to that in just a second. So here, now we got an idea. Sea of Galilee, this is where it took place, in between these places somewhere, beautiful spot. Now, next image. This is a first century boat pulled out of the Sea of Galilee. Now, we're not here saying this is the boat they were in. That's not what we're saying. But it's something like this. And in the very back, you can kind of get a faint illustration of what it would have been like drawing, right? You had one single mast. You had this boat, not very big. Namely, the sides aren't very big. And that's pretty cool, right? First century boat. Is there one more? Yeah. So now let's imagine that. All right, we've seen the Sea of Galilee. We know the Sea of Galilee also. It's like 3.5 miles wide and 15 miles long. And this is what they were working with as they rowed across these places. So when you think about Jesus going up to pray, praying all day, and it says later that night he was there alone. And then so they'd been rowing for a considerable time. How's that possible? It's like only 3 miles. Well, one, I'll tell you this. There's a place, if you've been around Jubilee long enough, you've heard of Bald Head Island, because Bryce, he talks about Jesus and Bald Head Island. That's like what he does. And so if you haven't been, you should go. It's beautiful. And they have this marsh area in that a lot of us guys, we've gone and fished this marsh. And you're in this kayak, and it goes in and out with the tide. And so when you're going out with the tide, oh man, this is money. I can do this all day long. Now, if you don't pay attention and you get stuck out there and the tide's coming against you as you're trying to get back home, you are in a bad way. I'm talking what could take 30 minutes going the right direction can take 4, 5, 6 hours. I don't know if I won't out the people, but there's 2 people that were here. I think one's in J-Kids. He would be like, amen. That's right. You try to go against the waves and the tide and the ocean, going against the direction it's trying to take you, you are in a world of hurt. And so I can speak to what happens when a storm comes up. We've got one more video. I thought this was cool. So this is the Sea of Galilee when like kind of a storm whips up. It's normally really flat. But you can see, like, it's got the capacity when a storm comes over those mountains, it can really, really whip up. And if you have a boat like we just saw where the sides are about yay big, you can, and your hand rowing it, you could get off course pretty quick, right? Get off course pretty quick. So, I like to think about these kind of things in these stories because it brings, now I can't see you guys, so it's a little weird. I'm just going to be honest. I like to imagine this because these are real events. These are real places. The Sea of Galilee is a real place. It has storms on it. It has waves. You put a boat that's got a 1.5-foot side on it with about 12 dudes, and you whip up the waves. That 3-mile, maybe hour rowing, you get sent to the middle of that sucker, and you're in trouble, right? So that's why you saw those waves. We don't know where the miracle happened. Like it's somewhere in the sea, but we don't know where. And so now it's almost dawn, right? So Jesus feeds the 5,000, dismisses the disciples. They've been sent out on the boat. Jesus has been praying all day, now pretty much all night. Storm whips up. It's almost dawn. And Jesus walks out to them. Now, they say, it's a ghost, which, yeah. Now, there is some belief that first century Jews, they thought that the Sea of Galilee, when people died on it, that there were like these spiritual figures that guarded that. So that's what their mind, that's the first place that their mind went. They're like, oh, that's a ghost. And so they're terrified, which I think is a perfectly reasonable explanation or response to that, but they're scared. So as Jesus gets closer, I just remembered it also. I had this teacher in middle school. I don't know if any adult ever tried to pull this off on tried on y'all yet, but he knew, he was a science teacher, and he knew that if you stood still like this and you got somebody at just the perfect angle, you could do like one of these numbers on your toe, and it looked like you were levitating. Anybody ever do that to you? You ever seen that? Yeah, we got a couple. Like that, Jesus walking on the water made me think of that. It was really, that's all. Just a little story for you. So, like maybe they thought he was levitating, but he's way more than a middle school science teacher. So, and it wasn't just a trick of the angles. If you're in the middle of the sea, there's only one way you can be up on top of it, and that's to be walking on it. And so that's happening, and we see Peter come into the picture immediately in the story, and he's like, Lord, if that's you, let me just say it and I'll come out there. He said, come. And so Jesus, though, it's one thing I want to point out in verse 27. Jesus' response when the disciples were so anxious, he said, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. And if you really look at the actual translation, there's not a Greek word in there for is. It's argued that what Jesus really said is, take courage, I am. And for those that know some of the historical stories in the Old Testament, when Moses meets with God at the burning bush and God says, go tell my people these things, he says, well, what should I tell them to call you? And God's answer was, tell them I am. And so it's one of the most divine names God ever used for himself. It's actually not the most often one that he used. It's one that he's used only a handful of times in very important places. And here, Jesus says, take courage, I am. Don't be afraid. So we see what happens with Peter, right? Now that we're on the 2,000-year other end of this story, we're like, yep, that's a move Peter would make. He walks out on water. He's walking on the water. Then he looks at the wind. Then he starts to doubt and he starts to sink, right? But that's the story of all of us too. I love Peter. Peter chops off people's ear, but he's also the same dude that denies Christ 3 times even after Jesus said, you're going to do it. And he said, no, I'm not. He did do that. And he's the same guy here who's got the courage to walk on water. He's walking on the water and then realizes, there's wind, and starts to doubt. And man, that's just the story of my life for sure. We've got our oldest son, Jacob. He's our second, and Natalie was pregnant, getting near the finish line. He was born in January, but December, a week before Christmas, Natalie's water breaks. And so we go to the hospital, and they're like, he was still at that point. We're about a month, 5 weeks early. And so in that process, you get there. We had never had anything like that happen. And, the doctors have to check some boxes. And one of the boxes I think they check right, wrong, or indifferent, is like, let me tell you all the things that could possibly happen. Okay? Not exactly helpful in that moment, because the things they tell you that could happen are all the bad things, right? And then they said, oh, but, I mean, like, you really should buckle in. You're going to be here for a month, bed rest, the whole thing. Because when the water breaks, it doesn't stop. I mean, there's a hole, and the water comes out. That's just the way it works. And we're like, okay, so we're trying to absorb all this information. Hey, it is. Again, just trying to keep it simple for everybody. So I hear her laughing. So we're there. We got these doctors, and this, like, all the neonatologists who are coming in talking about, like, you know, be prepared. Like, you know, kids that come this early, you can deal with some, like, slow development. You can deal with some mental issues. You can do all this, and this was weighing on us. And so, you know, we're in the hospital thinking we're in there for the long haul, and I'm praying. I'm like, God, like, I don't know what all this means, but if you could help us out and by, like, not let this happen. All the bad stuff, you know, the super bad stuff, we're just praying. And, you know, they have a way of measuring the amniotic fluid in the womb. And so they do that, like, especially if there's a leak, they're going to do that a lot. And so over the first couple of days, they start measuring this, and it was going down. And then about midweek, it stopped going down. And they're like, that's pretty curious. We've never really seen that before. And so they start measuring it. Long story short is that they came to us on Friday. It was the 23rd, and they said, we've got no reason to keep you here. It's sealed. There is no leak. And they sent us home. And we were worried because it was Chambly's real first Christmas, because she was a baby at 6 months old. So this was our first Christmas. We were going to do it at home, and we thought, no, we're going to spend it in the hospital. And so it was just an incredible moment of God's grace. He sent us home the day before Christmas Eve. And then, crazy, Jake was born on his due date on the 13th of January. So, February, yeah. Crosby was born. There's 5 of them. There's a bunch of dates. And so we can be like that. And so what I just want to us to see in this story of Jesus walking on the water is one that where this Friedman guy and his systems theory falls apart is, how do you become a non-anxious person? Because you can't just wake up and do it. But Jesus, in this example of walking on this water, he is our source of how we do this. He is our source of how we become a non-anxious person. I got the band to come up. Great. And so as I was studying, I really felt God press into me this one particular way of thinking about this. One, it was very clear. He was like, this is who I've made you to be. Okay, I have made my church to be an army of non-anxious people. Why? Because it is what breaks the spiral. But here's the thing about Jesus, and I want us all to see this. When he shows up on the scene and he walks up to a bunch of rough fishermen, he does not say to Peter, hey, here's the culture I need you to learn. Here are the things I need you to do. Here's the ways I want you to be. And when you've done them all and you've got it right, come follow me. He doesn't say it. What does he do? He walks up to some people that they have no idea who Jesus is. Like, we get the Bible. We get the full picture looking back. They don't. He walked up to them and he said, follow me. He didn't say to change anything. He didn't say to learn anything. He didn't say stop and think. He didn't say do anything. He just said follow me. And then Jesus spent the next 3 years exposing who he was to them, and it changed their life. It changed the way they see every single thing. So how do we become non-anxious people? You know, being a Christian is simply being a Jesus follower. It's not a culture that you join. It's a person that you follow. right? And culture wants to say to us, react, hurry up, blame, quick fix. And what we say and why Jesus is the cheat code is because he says, just follow me. And when you choose to follow him and you just say, yes, God, I will, the Holy Spirit then is given to us and enables us to do that very thing. Things that we can't do on our own, he gives us the way to do it. And that's how these disciples were. The Spirit falls on them, the church is born, and it is the greatest force for good in humanity's history. And it was because some guys followed the King. That's all it is. So, as we sing this song, there's two things I think that we can focus on. One is, am I caught up in this crazy spiral? Am I living and exposing who I am to the things of this world and just reacting and then hurting up and looking for a quick fix? And if that's true, that's understandable because it's so powerful today. The technology and the things around us are incredibly powerful. But Jesus has proven time and time again that if we'll follow him, he can make us new. He can make us non-anxious people. And living our lives in that way for the benefit of others, doesn't that sound a heck of a lot better than that other thing? So just think about that. Ask God, is there a place that I'm in the spiral? Break me free. If you've never said, Jesus, I don't know, but I know I don't want that. And if those fishermen can just look up and follow you, then maybe I'll give you a shot too and say yes. And you can do that today. So we'll worship.
Let's go ahead and stand together as we sing out a song. When waters rise. When waters rise all around me. When mountains stand in the path I see. I look to love that's unfailing. I look to grace that is all I need. Oh, call upon my name, Jesus Christ, the only name that saves. For there is no one like our God. There's no one like our God. There's nothing that can stand against you. And there's no stronghold you can't break, no life that you can't save. Our God, you never fail. Oh, we can trust you, Lord. Your light will shine. Your light will shine through the darkness. Your word will calm every crashing wave. My hope it lies in your promise, Lord. My faith it stands on the empty grave. Oh, call upon the name, Jesus Christ, the only name that saves.
thank you. Thanks for sending your son, Jesus. Jesus, thank you for just making a way, for coming and living the life that you did. For just saying, follow me. You don't have to be anything. You don't have to do anything. Just follow me. Thank you. In Jesus' name. So as we leave, I'm a firm believer that when you open Scripture, it can change your life every single time. And so we're going to go right back into the culture right now. And so you got to choose what to believe. You got to choose what to believe. But man, Jesus has made just the ultimate free gift for us to choose that way. So love you guys. Have a great spring break if you're going to do that. If you're not on spring break, sorry. Love you. See y'all.